A man sits huddled in a cave. He's given everything to do the right thing, to say the right thing, and all for the love of his God. And what does he get for his trouble? A price on his head. And you can just hear him in his interior heart saying, "Thanks a lot, God." So he runs for his life until he finds an opening in the rock where he can hide. Hide from his enemies, maybe even hide from his God. But you can't hide from God. And the voice of the Lord speaks to Elijah and says, "What are you doing here?" And Elijah says, "I have been very zealous for the Lord, and now your prophets are being killed, and I alone am left. And they want to kill me as well." Now, I've been meditating on this passage for several days now because I think most of us, many of us, have felt this way at some time or the other. We've wondered, am I the only sane person left? Am I the only person who believes what I believe and stands up for those beliefs? Am I the only one who gets it? And such questions have been swirling around me this week because of a convergence of a couple of events. One was the observation of the Pride events this weekend at Augusta and seeing the courage that it takes to say, "This is who I am. This is who I am." Now, I've walked with many in the LGBT community, and I know a little bit from hearing their stories about the loneliness and the ostracization that they've experienced and the questions that they ask. Am I alone because of who I am? Have I been abandoned by God? Will my church abandon me? Questions. The other event that really hit me this week was watching the documentary Emmanuel at Regal Cinema. It's about the massacre of 9 African Americans killed at Mother Emanuel Church in Charleston just as they were finishing up a Bible study. Now, frankly, I did not think there would have been many people in line to see such a documentary. I mean, who goes to documentaries, right? Who sees a documentary in the middle of the week? Oh, boy, howdy, was I wrong. It was sold out. And I got one of the very few tickets left. And I was also one of the very few white people in attendance. And throughout the showing, I could hear soft murmurings acknowledging hard truths, such as when AMC pastor James Darby said, "Racism is as American as apple pie." Ouch. A white person might disagree, but just ask an African American for their perspective. In some ways, Emmanuel is a feel-good movie which shares the stories of forgiveness that came scant days after the shooting, but that's only part of the story. It asked all viewers to dig deep into their lives and see how we participate in a racial divide. When I went online, I found a discussion guide, downloaded it, and found that it asked these questions. Will Emmanuel be just another film that generates a fleeting sense of outrage and urgency? Or will it be a catalyst that accelerates and deepens our individual and collective pursuit of racial reconciliation and justice? The answer is in each of our hands. And it went on to say, while there's no single remedy to combat racism and prevent more acts of racial violence, every courageous conversation, act of solidarity, and changed mind and heart puts an important dent in the walls of racism. It said you can start with the places close to you, your church, community, city, by closing the moral distance between yourselves and people of another race. That's what we're doing. That's what I pray we're doing. And beloved, we do this because of Jesus. We do it like everything because of Jesus, who saw no difference between people. And one of his final prayers at the Last Supper was a plea that we all might be one. You heard an echo of that with Paul's letter this morning. There's no Jew nor Greek, slave nor free. We're all one. And it does not mean agreeing on every hot-button issue. It does mean coming together as the body of Jesus Christ. It means listening to each other. It means withholding comment or judgment, and instead just being present. Just being present. And my beloved, it's that simple and it is that hard. Sometimes I still wonder if we do not live in the wild, wild west, shoot first and ask questions later. But now's the time to ask questions and then listen to the response, because you and I do not know what it's like to be defined as the other. I don't necessarily know what it's like to be defined as the other. I don't know what it's like to be an African American. I don't know what it's like to be gay. I don't know what it's like to raise a child with all the joys and sorrows that go along with being a parent. I don't know what it's like to be a white male. I know some are wondering if they're about to be put on the Endangered Species Act. And you don't know what it's like to be a priest these days. You don't know what it's like to be a priest trying to remain centered for the sake of Jesus and the sake of the Church of Christ, and to have doors slammed in your face on the right and the left because you're trying to hold the center of unity in Christ. And that's the problem. We don't know. We don't know. We don't know what it's like to walk in the shoes of another person. But what's worse, there are some who just don't want to know. In the past, getting to know another person, getting to know their opinion was called civil discourse. It was practiced regardless of race, religion, economic, or social standing. In the South, and I especially hear my mother at this point, we would just call it good manners. Good manners. Christians call it the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Those are the words that Jesus taught us. Edwin Markham wrote, "We've committed the golden rule to memory. Let us now commit it to life." But that's a novel concept for some. We'd rather sit in their cave with Twitter or Facebook or Instagram and hurl stones at everybody else. It's called a lack of civility, and it is epidemic, and nothing in this smacks of Jesus. This has nothing to do with any political party. As St. Paul said in his letter to the Romans, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. That is what you and I are called to reflect in our lives in Jesus, the glory of God. But it's hard to see the glory for all the mud that has been flung on it by society. Where's the gallantry? Where's the gallantry to be found today that once echoed in such lofty sentiments as, "I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it"? In her book, Saving Civility, Sarah Hakala writes, "What I find alarming is how polite and respectful behavior is vanishing from our world today. We behave and treat one another badly in our day-to-day lives. It causes our relationships and our society at large to fragment and deteriorate, and we are all suffering as a result. Treating people well and having the crucial ability to develop and maintain meaningful relationships, provided the essential grease that makes our lives and the rest of the world go round. We spin out of control into chaos, where everyone talks at once but no one listens, where we say hurtful things and do harmful acts at will without remorse or punishment, and where outrageous exploits are protected by a veil of anonymity. Without any resistance, bad behavior continues to spread, threatening to become the new normal." And she says, enough is enough. She wrote that book in 2011, okay? 2011. it could have been published today. Uncivil behavior is not new. It's just more readily accessible because of the digital age. To give you some perspective, in the presidential election of 1828, which I remember, maybe some of you do as well, in the election of 1828, Andrew Jackson was excoriated. He was vilified as a murderer, and his wife was called a prostitute. And I'm using the nice words. Actually, I can't use the language to describe Jackson in church. And then there was the case in 1856. Maybe y'all remember 1856. No, okay. 1856. A fight breaks out on the floor of the U.S. Senate. Pro-slavery Congressman Preston Brooks of South Carolina took a cane and he beat abolitionist Senator Charles Sumner of Massachusetts so badly it took more than 3 years for Sumner to recover from his injuries and return to his post. Again, to quote my mom, that's just not done. It's just not done. But apparently it was. And maybe some people would like it to still be that way. And this is where we have to say, as those who follow Jesus, beloved, enough is enough. Enough is enough. We have to take a stand, and we have to say there is a new normal, that the new normal of incivility is anything but normal. Please, if you hear nothing else today, hear that. The incivility that we are experiencing today should never be the new normal. We, as the people of Christ, are the normal, which makes us abnormal, and that's okay. To think otherwise, well, that's to be aware of the demonic. And we can be so surrounded by the demonic, we think this is just the way things are. The late preacher Fred Craddock, who was so awesome, he had an interesting take on that in regards to the gospel we heard today about the Gennesarene demoniac. Craddock says that the people of Gennesarene, when confronted with evil, kept it in chains. They never tried to exorcise it, they never tried to rid their community of the demonic presence. Craddock speculates that the community learned to live with demonic forces because they had felt that if they isolated it, they managed it. But that's all they did. They managed the demon. They managed the demon. And then Jesus came. Jesus came, and the demons who are legion are cast out. And the man who had been possessed is now in his right mind and right spirit. Beloved, I do not want us to be people who just manage demons. I want us to be the people who exorcise the demons. The way things are do not have to be the way things are. And you and I can start that revolution right here, right now in this place, with a return to normalcy and sanity. Mahatma Gandhi said, "Whatever you do may seem insignificant, but it is most important that you do it." We have to go back to Jesus and his teachings, and then we have to live them out. That's the mission statement of Holy Comforter. Love God, love others, serve God, serve others. I also go back to the story of Elijah. When he felt like he was all alone and was railing against God, he didn't have the encounter with the divine in the earthquake or in the fire. God came to him in the sound of sheer silence, that still, small voice. So, beloved, I ask you to take a fast from shooting off unnecessary emails or Facebook comments. I ask you to take time to listen to God. Take time to listen to the voices around you. Listen with the ear of God and the heart of Jesus. Take time to be civil in an uncivil world. And do it for the love of God. For God's sake. For your sake. Just do it. In Jesus' name,
Amen.